Good afternoon. My name is Ernesto Perez. I'll be your host today for the webinar on Maintenance Asset Health Index. Presenting with us is going to be Angel Torres. He is our Info-EAM lead from Visual K. And unfortunately, he's not going to be able to join us today, so he left a recording of the subject we're going to be talking about. However, I will try to answer your questions as you may have them. But if I don't have the answer at this point, I will make sure that we get back to you, either myself or Angel, with the answer. So feel free to anytime to submit your questions, and when we are able, we will get back to you with the answer. So without further ado, we can start the video.
Hello, everyone. I am your host for this webinar, Angel Torres with Visual K. What we do at Visual K is we help keep power plants running, and we do so by using our EM4EAM software to manage assets and their maintenance. Now, in terms of what we've done so far, we have implemented over 80 plants across the US, the Caribbean, Central America, and now South America. So over the years, we've been extremely busy working with our customers in setting up their plans, setting up their assets, setting up their maintenance programs. But one thing that we noticed when we look at the power plants was trying to make the connection, right? If the ultimate objective of doing asset management is getting to understand what is the health of our assets, we see basically two options, right? We can hook up a turbine or an engine to a control system, and we can basically take the vital signs of how that turbine or engine is performing. However, um, there are many other auxiliary systems, subsystems, components that are not necessarily hooked up to a DCS or that don't necessarily have any kind of interface that's providing some kind of performance data in real time. So what we thought is that we could basically, let's say, extrapolate the asset health by means of looking at the transactional data that's been generated from our maintenance activities on a day-to-day, and take that to give us an indication of what is the health of that asset. So this is where the maintenance asset health index uh, came about, right? This is how it got started. That this is something that Visual K designed, put together, validated, and now we're implementing it with our power plants, right? So let's get into the matter of what's behind it, right? So for example, let's look at a steam turbine within a combined cycle power plant, right? So basically what we want to be able to do is to look unit by unit at the individual subsystem, major subsystems that make up for that unit, right? So we could have a maintenance asset health index at the Hertz level, at the steam turbine, at the generator, at the transformer, looking at the control systems, and then looking at the balance of plant, right? So for a steam turbine, we can generate basically 6 different asset health index indicators looking at these major subsystems. Now, that also applies to, let's say, wind turbines, right? We can look at the rotor, we can look at the generator, we can look at the control system, we can look at the transformer, basically just the same way, right? And that cuts across into other generation technologies such as hydro, diesel engines. But basically, the concept is being able to take each unit, look at its major subsystems, and then we can drill down from there, which you will see as I move along with this presentation, which, by the way, this is a pre-recorded presentation, so I won't be taking your questions today, but I would love for you to engage through our LinkedIn pages or directly through our webpage at visualk.com. So moving on, right? So let's talk about the asset health index, right? Basically, this is a function that we put together that look at these six different components, right? So we're looking at probability. And the probability, instead of getting into very, very complicated engineering stuff, we decided to look at the asset life cycle from the point of view of how much time do you have left before the next major overhaul, right? So, and probably the question behind it is how much risk do you have as you um, go through that life cycle? How much time left before the next one, right? The closer you get to that next overhaul, the higher your risk of some failure, right? Um, Second component, PM compliance. So the question is, are we keeping up with our preventive maintenance program? Are we generating all of the work orders that need to be generated? Are we completing these work orders on time, all the time? Then we look at the what we call the work order split, right? We're looking at the ratio between preventive and corrective work orders. So the question here is how effective is my PM program? If we're doing our PMs right, we should have fewer failures, fewer corrections. So that's what we're trying to measure here. Now, the next one, are we taking care of the highest priority work when we go out to the field? And then another very important factor is what is the condition of the asset? And we say according to the people on the field. And I'll explain a little bit more about what we mean by that. And then finally, do we have the right spares in the right quantities so when we actually need them, we can move ahead and do the work that we need to do? So if we don't, we are putting our facility at risk, right? We're introducing another factor. So we're taking these six factors, blending them together, and coming up with the maintenance asset health index. So let me get into each one of them. What I'll do is I'll explain each one of them, and at the very end, we're going to take a look at the actual dashboard that displays the asset health index at the plant level, at the unit level, at the subsystem level, and then for each subsystem, we can drill down into each and all of these different components. And then we get visibility into what's going on. So this is something that I can present to my generation manager. I can present to my plant manager. I can present to my maintenance manager, my maintenance supervisors, my people on the field actually turning the wrenches. Okay, so let's begin with probability, right? So, like I said, we're trying to find a simple way to look at probability, risk, and time, right? So, basically, what we're saying here is that we're following that bathtub curve in terms of in the lifetime, the life cycle of the asset, you have a bigger risk of failure in the early life. Obviously, it kind of drops down, and then you have a much, much bigger risk at the end of life because things just wear out, right? So, what we did is that we are looking and defining this bathtub or looking at this bathtub curve starting from the last major overhaul on to the next one. So basically, let's say that there is a gas turbine overhaul basically every 36 months, right? So I can look at the time that has elapsed since the last one, and I can say, okay, so we're 24 months into a 36-month cycle. So basically, I have already consumed 66% of my time, right? So the higher the percent, the higher the penetration into that cycle, the higher the probability of failure, right? So kind of an easy way. Obviously, we can get all engineer here and look at all kinds of decay curves, and there's all that complicated math out there. We're trying to keep it very, very simple. Now, the next one, PM compliance. Very simple, right? So again, we're measuring, and the foundation for all of these measures is based on that time lapse for my from my last major overhaul to the next one, right? So we're looking at, in that period of time, how many of my PM schedules generated work orders, and then out of those work orders, how many did I close on time, right? So basically, we're looking at the scheduled end date on my work orders and looking at the actual end date on the work order. And if those two coincide, that's a hit, right? So basically, we're looking at the total number of hits over the total number of work orders that were generated in that period. And that gives me that second factor, which is my PM compliance. The next one is the ratio between preventive and corrective. We call it work order split, right? Again, looking at that life cycle between overhauls, right? And then just looking at the number of corrective work orders to preventive work orders that were generated over the period, right? So we're just looking at the correlation between the preventive work orders to the total number of work orders during that period. The next one talks about work order priority. Now, let me explain how we're dealing with priority at the work order level. So what we did is that instead of having somebody decide what is the priority on the work order, what we decided to do was to create an algorithm, a very simple one that takes into account the asset that I'm going to work with, and then looking at the criticality of that asset. So we devised a very simple setup that has a very simple scale going from 1 through 6, right? 1 really doesn't affect the operation, all the way down through 6, which is essential to safety, right? The plant is going to blow up if we don't take care of this asset, right? Then we also looked and rated the work order itself, right? Because the fact that you might be working on a essential to safety critical item or piece of equipment doesn't necessarily mean that the work that you're going to do is just as critical, right? So again, we rated through this very simple scale the impact this work order has on the entire scheme, right? And then the other factor that we introduced was the use of the H factor. So basically what we're doing is that we're looking at how that work order is aging, right? So if the work order was created and now it's in the first cycle, which is we define it as the first 14 days. We're just going to give it a weight of 1. As it ages, then that aging increases, right? So at the end of this, what we do is that we basically take these 3 numbers, multiply it, and we come to something like this, right? So depending on where that calculation falls, we're going to assign it an urgent priority 1, 2, or 3 to that work order. Now, the other thing is that as the work order ages, it has an effect over time in terms of the priority, right? So if we look at the combination of these 3 factors with the very first cycle, the first bucket in terms of the first 2 weeks, this is how it looks, right? As we move into the third and the fourth week, the priority starts to rise, right? And so it goes all the way up to the highest priority possible, right? Again, if we have a low criticality asset, a low work order impact, it can age and it's not necessarily going to rise all the way up to urgent, right? So if my setup is correctly, this will take care of itself, right? So now you understand how we are calculating the priority. Whichever way you are calculating the priority, it's fine, right? But it's one of the elements that we want to look at. So again, when we're calculating this, right, We are again are looking at all the work orders that have been generated or created over that period of time between overhauls, right? So basically, we're looking at the urgents and the priorities one, and then we're looking at everything else, right? So basically, at the end of the day, what we do is that we look at the number of urgent and priority one work orders that have been closed over the complete set of work orders that were created over the period. So basically, what we're measuring is whether or not you are closing and taking care of the urgent and the critical work orders, right? You could be the champion of work orders, but you're absolutely doing nothing if you're just closing, the lowest priority work orders, like a madman. We want to make sure that you're doing this and focusing on the most critical, right? Then the next one, right, has to do with the condition of the asset. Now, basically, this is a snapshot. So at the asset level, we have criticality of the asset, right? Whenever there is a work order out there, basically we ask the technician or the mechanic to do a visual assessment of the condition of that asset, right? So again, very simple, non-scientific. It's based on my personal criteria, but there are many assets out there, be it components, subsystems, major systems. Some of them don't have any way of communicating and letting you know exactly how they feel, right? So whenever the doctor goes visit, they come back to us and they say, you know what, this patient I just visited, it's in really good shape, or it's in a condition that's messed up beyond repair, right? So we take that information, and for example, what we also want to do is to be able to signal, right? If I am a major system, like let's say a gas turbine, right? And I look at the first stage compressor and I look at the blades, these blades are critical, but they could be in a poor condition. As I move into the second stage and I look at the blades, these are critical as well, but they could be in a good condition. So what we do is that we take basically the condition of the highest, most critical element, and then take the worst condition of that I identified through my assessment and basically roll it up to its parent. So basically what you're saying is, me as a parent, I know I have a problem with one of my children, so I'm inheriting basically that problem, right? So it's a way to say, listen, this asset could be compromised because one of its elements down there, which is critical, is in bad shape, right? So this is what we are looking at, and that's the information that we're bringing forward. There's some other conditions there I won't get into now. The other element, and this is the asset criticality scale, like I said, right? It goes all the way from 1 through 6, in terms of identifying the criticality of the asset. Now, and this is also the evaluation that's done on the field. Again, person going out to the field with a work order in hand and his mobile device. Um, Once he's done doing his work, he will just make an evaluation that goes from 1, which is very good, no major problems there, all the way through 5, which means this needs to be replaced and it needs to be replaced now, right? So that's how the evaluation works. Now, the last element on the formula has to do with critical spares. This one is a little bit simpler, right? So we're looking at, and again, whenever we calculate these things, some of them, like the acid condition and the critical spares, are really a snapshot, right? It's a reflection of what's in the system at that particular moment in time, right? So for an asset, I can define the critical spares that I need, and then I can go about defining how many do I need, right? So what we do is that we compare the quantity required for that asset, for that part, sorry, to the current availability in stock, right? What is my stock level at that moment? And then if I'm meeting that requirement, um, that's a hit. If I don't, that's a miss, right? So basically, in this example, you would have a critical spares level of 50%. Okay, so these are the 6 components that we're bringing from your maintenance transactional data, blending them together in a way that we think makes a lot of sense. And I hope you think the same, and producing this index, right? So here's a little math. So let's say that I'm the first row here, my score, right? I'm looking at the time before overhaul. I have a score of 20%. Now, how do we bring all of these together? Well, we introduced a weight factor, right? That is just a distribution, and that's a configuration that we can do for, at a company level, at a plant level, at a unit level. You decide, right? It's not imposed. But basically, what it allows you to do is to take each one of those factors and decide the level of importance, right? What's more important to you? Is it the time left before the overhaul? Is it the work order split? Whatever it is, you can tweak it. Now, you may also have some areas where, let's say, for example, you don't have, or you're not keeping your parts in a stock room, or you're not keeping that in an inventory management system. Well, you can turn it off, right? So you have that option as well. At the end of the day, basically we're taking that final rating is just the score times the weight, right? And we just add up all the different ratings to come up with the maintenance asset health index. In this example, it comes down to 91%, which means you're in a very, very good shape. Okay, so how does it look, right? And I'll take you to a live system in just a second. But basically, we created a dashboard at a plant level, and then it displays the maintenance asset health index at a unit level, right? And then it goes into showing you how these different factors they add up uh, for each one of these units, right? And then at a unit level, right, then you can look at the individual components of the asset health index, the asset condition, inventory compliance, overhaul, PM compliance, work order priority, and work order split. So let me just switch gears real quick and take you here, right? So this is a live environment, right? I'm looking at the power plant level. I'm looking at the unit. So let's take a look at my unit 12, right? And here for unit 12, I have a 45% maintenance asset health index, which is coming off from my asset condition, which is at 65%, right? And I gave it a weight of 35%. Inventory compliance, I'm really doing bad in this one because I'm not meeting the critical spares requirement. I'm 79 or 80% down the road in terms of the time before that had elapsed after my last overhaul, right? Looking at my PM compliance, again, not doing well here. My work order priority, so. My work order split, so, right? So let's look into, for example, my asset condition. So, and here's really where the magic happens, right? So I'm looking at the detail in terms of at my unit, right? I'm looking at the individual asset, and I'm looking at which ones are the most critical in the worst condition possible. So with that, I'm able to identify exactly where is my system having problems in terms of the condition of the either subsystems or components that make up this major system, right? So again, remember what I said. This is the kind of information that you can put in front of your generation director, or whichever way his or her title goes in your organization. You can bring it at the plant manager level. You can bring it at the maintenance manager level, which is probably where he or she will drill to understand what's going on with this turbine. What is uh, putting that turbine at risk, right? So I will drill here, and from there I will take action, right? Either decide to stop that turbine, uh, obviously let it cool, and then take a look at the this platform. Actually, this is a good example. Um, See how this platform is in really bad shape? Well, the question is, does the platform has anything to do with the functioning of that turbine? The answer is no, right? That platform is just there for you to access that turbine and being able to walk around it. So one option could be to say, well, it's really not impacting the performance of my turbine. So how about if we, for example, we move it around and we assign it to the balance of plant, right? And then you can certainly treat your balance of plant in a much different way than you can treat the actual turbine, right? Um, so again, the idea here is that you get actionable information, and that allows you to look at how well is my asset, how well am I performing my maintenance, so that you can make decisions, right? And they can go all the way up through, director level down to the supervisors on the field. So this is the maintenance asset health index that Visual K has developed. It's been a really nice journey that started maybe like 3 years ago, looking for ways to uh, give our customers an ability to measure this kind of thing using the data that we have, right? In an ideal world, everything would be connected. Well, we're not there yet, right? So this is how this came about. Um, Now, what we're finding is that even customers that are not necessarily using Infor EAM, we can generate the same set of numbers out of the data that they have in their CMMSs. So what we're validating is that this is a universal concept that we can apply across the board. So thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, this is a pre-recording, so please let us know what you think. Visualk.com is out there in LinkedIn, and almost every other social network. If not, come visit us at visualk.com. You can also find me at LinkedIn, um, Angel Torres. So again, thank you so very much for joining us today.
All right. So thank you very much to Angel. So we have one question at this point. Make sure if you have any other questions that you are able to sneak them in. But the question is the maintenance asset health index part of the EAM system, or is it another system? Or is it like a dependence of EAM? So two-part question, right? But the first part of it is the maintenance asset health index is in this case, it's established on a business intelligence tool from Infor that is called Burst. But it also is independent from Infor EM, but it also communicates with the system in a very good interaction, because Infor is very proactive in getting all its tools to communicate seamlessly between themselves. Um, so yeah, it's a business intelligence tool that you can use for different softwares. Okay. I don't have any other questions at this point, and I thank you for that question. But feel free to contact us at either visualk.com, or you can contact us directly to ernesto.perez@visualk.com or angel.torres@visualk.com. So, and this will be recorded and will be displayed in our website as well. And of course, it will also be shared with you guys. So anything that you are interested in more information or anything, let us know and we'll get back to you. So without anything else, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend.